Welcome back to Steel City Sports. So today we're going to be doing a recap of the divisional round of the playoffs. Let me know in the comments how your picks did. I went 3-1, so definitely better from Wild Card Weekend. Just let me know your reaction to these games. This is definitely a bittersweet time of the year because we're getting the best football. These games have been great, but we know in a couple weeks it's all going to be over. You know, it's heartbreaking. We're going to be going 6 months without NFL football. So that is definitely a scary thought, but don't go anywhere here because we're going to have a lot to talk about in the offseason about this season overall. A lot of interesting stuff happened, so let's get into the divisional round games. So our first game was the Houston Texans and the Baltimore Ravens. The Texans finally, their big turnaround season finally does come to an end. But if you're a Texans fan, pat yourself on the back because what a hell of a year they had. I mean, that is one of the greatest one-season turnarounds in the history of the sport. To go from last place in your division to winning the division and then winning a playoff game the next year with a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach. It's phenomenal. As for the particular game, though, I mean, I think that they were pretty competitive. I mean, the game was tied going into halftime, 10-10. And I was thinking to myself, I was thinking of things to talk about whenever we reviewed this game ultimately. And I was like, are we going to see history repeat itself with Lamar Jackson, with all the hype behind Baltimore this year, with Lamar winning the MVP this year, rightfully so. I think he does deserve to be the MVP. But are we going to see another playoff collapse? This would have been awful for Lamar's legacy had they just blown this game to the Houston Texans, which, again, they're a great story. But when it comes to talent and roster standpoint, the Baltimore Ravens are in a completely different stratosphere than the Houston Texans. So if they lost this game, I cannot even put into words how bad that would have been for not only Lamar, but just the franchise as a whole. So to see them flip that switch, I think it shows you that this is a different Baltimore team, because teams in the past, whenever they get off to a slow start, that kind of was like a snowball effect for the Ravens in past playoff runs. That's why we didn't see them have much sustained playoff success. Whenever they got off to the slow start, they would usually end up giving up a lot of points, and then it'd be hard for them to battle out of that. And Lamar was not good whenever he was trailing in games. That wasn't the case in this game because, like we said, it was tied going to halftime, and Baltimore came out and just looked like a different team in the second half. The energy they played with, wow. I mean, I think, we've talked about all year about how I think the 49ers have been the most physical team in football. That might have changed, in my opinion, now. I think the Baltimore Ravens are legitimately the most physical team in the league. They just punch you in the mouth. They play a very smash mouth type of football where they beat you up. And it makes sense for this Ravens franchise, knowing their history. Lamar was fantastic in the second half. I mean, he really turned things around. And I think you can make an argument Lamar Jackson is the most unique talent we've ever seen, because you take a look at some of the other rushing quarterbacks. I don't think they've ever been as good a passer as Lamar Jackson. The 1-2 threat he provides is sensational. The guy's just a stud, and it really showed in this game. Overall, Baltimore, I think there's a good chance you look up and they're in the Super Bowl. We're obviously going to talk about championship round predictions, but Baltimore, I think this was kind of a statement win for the simple fact that it looked kind of rocky that first half, and we talked about rust potentially being a factor with this game, them getting off to a slow start, but to come out in the second half and do what they did and look that good, I think really was a statement for the Baltimore Ravens. And the next game, of course, was the Packers and the Niners. The Niners looked vulnerable in this game. I know that they won, but the Packers, for majority of this game, looked like the better team. It looked like they deserved to win this game. They just looked better prepared. Matt LaFleur was out-coaching Kyle Shanahan in this game. And then they just kind of collapsed in the fourth quarter. And I think that just comes down to playoff inexperience. I mean, this is one of the youngest teams in the history of the league to ever make the playoffs. The fact that they won a playoff game in of itself is ridiculous. We talked enough about that Dallas collapse. I won't beat a dead horse. But for this game, like I said, this is so impressive. I think Matt LaFleur doesn't get enough credit around the league because a lot of people just thought you have Aaron Rodgers. How hard is it to coach? Well, look at the job he did this year with Jordan Love. I mean, Jordan Love looks like a stud. And like I said, for the 49ers, they just did not impress me at all. If you would have told me before the playoffs started that the NFC Championship game is going to be Niners-Lions, I would say I am 1,000% confident the Niners are going to win that game. But now it's kind of, for me, more like a 50-50 with how weird. That was just a weird game for the Niners. Like, Brock Purdy looked off the entire night. Shanahan's scheme for this game, to me, really made no sense, and he tends to be really good at adjusting, but he was not in this game. Just kept going to the pass game, even when Brock Purdy just wasn't looking very good in this game. So they squeaked by here. I don't have a lot of confidence for them going forward. I think Detroit does have one major weakness. That is their secondary. So if the Niners are able to exploit that, they obviously are going to win the game. But like I said, I don't have a lot of confidence in them based off of this performance. And the next game was the Buccaneers-Lions game. This game was back and forth. It was a good game. I felt like it could have went either way, but ultimately the Lions came out on top due to the Buccaneers just making a couple reckless decisions, notably Baker Mayfield throwing that interception. Pretty ugly pick, Like, some picks are like, it's not the guy's fault, it got tipped up. No, Baker just threw a god-awful pick, and it was kind of sad to see the Bucs season end that way, because I've been rooting for Baker a lot this season. But ultimately, it came down to, can you make the big play? And he just wasn't able to do it. And Todd Bowles as well was a little questionable in this one. I gave Todd Bowles a ton of credit for how he was able to pick apart the Eagles in the wild card game. But why didn't he call that final timeout? Like, that blows my mind, because you still had a shot in this game whenever that happened. I don't get what happened there. That was kind of a meltdown. But ultimately, the Detroit Lions, like we said, they pulled it out, and I think I'm actually, I don't know. I don't want to give my actual pick yet for the Lions-Niners game, but like I said earlier when we were talking about the Niners, like, I think momentum-wise, the Lions have way more momentum entering that game than the 49ers do. And Jared Goff is playing the best football of his career. I mean, he is playing perfect football right now. I've seen Jared Goff this year get rattled in the big games, but in the two playoff games, Jared Goff's been perfect. And, a lot of people talk about, like, in the bad conditions, he gets bad. Well, they're playing in San Francisco. It's going to be like 60 degrees. I think he grew up in that area anyways. So definitely interested to talk about that game. We'll get to that. But the Lions, they advanced to their second NFC championship game in their franchise history. So obviously this is one of their best seasons ever. You got to feel good for the Lions just because they've been through so much shit. But they got it done, and I legitimately think they have one of the best player-for-player rosters in the entire league. And then we have the main event, Chiefs-Bills, the most anticipated game of the playoffs thus far. I think it lived up to the hype. This game was back and forth the entire time. Ultimately, the Chiefs come out on top. I felt like if the Bills were ever going to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, this was going to be the year to do it, because this is the most vulnerable the Chiefs have looked in the Mahomes era. I get it, their defense is really good, but specifically the offense didn't look very good this year. Like, Mahomes definitely had a big drop-off in terms of statistical production. The receivers outside of Rashee Rice are just not good at all. Travis Kelce looked like he was rapidly exiting his prime, but he had 2 touchdowns in this game. I don't know what to say about the Bills going forward. Like, this is always going to be the team they run into, and they just haven't been able to do it in the playoffs. It's got to be so frustrating. Like, for Josh Allen to play that well and still not be able to get the win at home, just felt like story-wise, momentum-wise, all of that was on the Bills' side for this game, and they just weren't able to do it. And Mahomes, like I said, is the best in the world. And I'm always going to bring this up just because it blows my mind. It might be annoying because I say this every time I talk about Mahomes on here, but I put up a poll on my channel a couple weeks back. I said, do you still consider Patrick Mahomes the best player in the league? 80% of you voted no, he's not. And that just blows my mind, because look at that performance tonight. That showed you why he is still number one. And then, of course, Tyler Bass. I mean, I don't know what to say. I mean, I do kind of feel bad for the guy, because the amount of hate he got drove him to delete all of his social media accounts. So somebody check on Tyler Bass. But wow, I mean, I've been watching the NFL for 8 years now, and I don't think I've ever seen a more just embarrassing miss than that. I mean, that was bad. But overall, that's my reaction to the divisional round. If you guys made it this far, really appreciate you listening to me ramble on here. Go ahead and leave a comment how your predictions went, your thoughts on the games. Thanks for watching.